Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. Shure, sound extraordinary. To podcasters, recording musicians, and streamers who are looking for studio quality audio at home or on the road, the Shure MV7 Podcast Kit is a premium all-in-one solution inspired by the legendary Shure SM7B and is designed to address the versatility required by modern creators. For more on the Shure MV7 Podcast Kit, visit shure.com, SHURE.com, or click the link in our show notes. Shure, sound extraordinary. And by The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
Hello, this is producer-director Ron Clements, and you are listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Aye, mateys, remember this as the day you sailed with the Skull Rock Podcast. Proceed at your own risk, and mark well me words, mateys. Dead men tell no tale.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, and music, as well as what's streaming, what's in theaters, and what's happening in this universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon, musician and longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and pop culture fan, and you can email me, Aljon, ALJON, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, Disney historian, and author. Welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on the Skull Rock YouTube channel. You can also email me, Dave at skullrockpodcast.com. Aljon, we're doing a short show this week because you're going undercover to Walt Disney World, aren't you?
You blew my cover, Dave. Yeah. We're having fun there, and we're hitting up all the places with the kiddos, and they love it. It's great to go back to the parks. I can't wait.
Well, this week we are kicking off an extensive deep dive interview with director, story artist, animator, all around great guy, Kevin Lima. This year is the 30th anniversary of the Goofy movie, which Kevin directed. He also directed Enchanted, 101 or 102 Dalmatians? One of those live action films. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to go into all of this stuff with Kevin with part one of the show.
All right. Enjoy right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Well, Aljon, we have an incredible guest, as we do every week, but really I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. We've got director Kevin Lima. Kevin, welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You know, it was so great having you and Eric and Chris on to talk about the Goofy movie documentary a few months ago, and it was great to kind of reconnect with you. So I'm so glad we have you back today to start talking about your incredible career. And all the projects you worked on. So I'm going to dive in here with the first question that I always ask our guests, and that is, how did you get involved in animation? What was the spark for you?
Oh boy, it goes way back. I was one of those kids that at a very early age was drawing. So I can't remember a time when I didn't hold a pencil in my hand. I really give a lot of credit to my grandmother, Salima Lima. What a name, huh?
Wow.
She got married and got that name, by the way. But Salima Lima. She was an artist herself. She was a seamstress, and she sort of flinted that spark in me, that creative spark. And with her, I started making puppets and drawing. And just like we'd sit around her table in her kitchen and we would just create. And then I saw Jungle Book, like most in my generation, right? A Jungle Book is a big influence. I saw Jungle Book when I was 5.
And that was a re-release.
No, it was 1967.
Oh, so that was
That
the
was the
original
original
release.
release. Yeah.
Wow.
I
Okay.
saw it then, and I don't remember this, but my mother said, those are the people, the names, scroll up. And she said, those are the people who made this movie. And she says, I said to her, I'm going to make this movie when I grow up.
Wow. Wow.
So at a very early age, I was kind of focused down. Yeah.
And so because of that, did you gravitate to more art classes in high school, or
Yeah.
how would you characterize that?
Yeah, I was always sort of leaning towards the arts, always, whether it be drawing or performing. I was a puppeteer at a very young age. I was doing birthday party shows. And then when I was 14, I became an apprentice at a professional puppetry company in Rhode Island called the Puppet Workshop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Are
yeah.
they still there?
They're not. They're no longer there. No, unfortunately. Um, but I was, I was a welfare kid, right? So my parents were divorced, and I was able to get a work study class, not a job, a work study job, at 14. And I had seen the Puppet Workshop perform. They had known about me. I had visited the Puppet Workshop, and I actually went to them and said, if you sign up for a kid, I'll sign up to be a puppeteer and we can make a match. And so I made that happen. And I remember going in and them saying to me, like when I went into the Pawtucket Welfare Department, they said, we know what you're doing. We figured this out. You made this happen. And at that very early age, I learned, oh, you can actually like ask for what you want. And sometimes you get it. Sometimes people actually say yes.
Well, I often tell people you never know until you ask,
That's absolutely true.
right? You may assume
Absolutely
it's a
true.
no, but how do you know until you ask?
Yeah.
Because it could be a yes.
I think during this conversation, you'll find out that almost everything that's happened for me in a positive way has been something that I asked for.
Yeah.
And this was the first time I put it all together, right? I put together, oh, if I sort of, I don't want to say manipulate, but if I like lay all the pieces in place, it might just happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the big thing really is that once you ask and someone says yes, you have to be prepared to take on the job, right?
Right. Right.
I was doing puppets for a long time and they knew me. So I kind of thought, okay, all the pieces are coming together here. I can make this work. And it did. And I worked for them every summer and holidays through before my junior year of college.
Is that
I
right?
was going back to Rhode Island and working my summers in Rhode Island with the Puppet Workshop.
And college was where did you go to college?
Well, I went to Emerson College in Boston for a year because I had this weird fantasy or this dream that maybe I would be in the theater.
Right.
My last years of high school were very much taken up with the theater department, and I was already performing. Right, I was a puppeteer, so I was making puppets, and I was designing shows, and I was directing puppet shows and performing. So I had that bug in me, and so I went to Emerson College. And after really 3 months there, I said, "What am I doing? I don't belong here. I'm an animator. I love to draw. I love to create characters that don't exist, that don't exist in the real world, right?" So I applied to Cal Arts in November of my freshman year at Emerson College, and luckily got in.
Before we go on to Cal Arts,
Yeah.
I'm curious to ask you. You were already performing puppet shows.
Yeah.
When you went to Emerson, was it the fact that you were on stage to perform?
I had done a lot of high school theater.
Okay,
Also.
so
I was on stage a bunch.
you were used to that.
Yeah, and I didn't know whether or not I would, and I love live theater, I have to say. It's like one of the great passions is live theater. It's something I wish I had been able to do, maybe professionally. Um, so I thought for a moment, maybe this is where I should be. I draw, I create characters, I can design. Maybe that's where I need to be. And what I realized ultimately is that I'm someone who hides as a performer, right?
Okay.
I hide behind characters. I hide behind puppets. I hide behind the white sheet of paper. Um, and I feel comfortable creating that way. I don't always feel comfortable totally exposing myself in the moment. Whenever I did theater in high school, I was playing a like a theatricalized character.
Hmm.
So when it came time to really dig in and, you know, sort of dig deep and use who you are on stage and expose yourself in that way, I just felt uncomfortable. I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, this doesn't feel right to me. It's
Okay.
time to, it's time to re-engage with what I always wanted to be.
Yeah, I think I was kind of alluding to that when it was sort of like you got to Emerson and you were up on stage. It was like you were exposed to an audience as opposed to
Yeah,
being behind the curtain with the puppets,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I
Yeah.
think that's really
So,
true.
yeah, wow.
That's really true.
So you applied to Cal Arts, you got accepted, and you went
I
to
got
Cal
in
Arts.
and I went to Cal Arts. I'd never visited the school. I just got on a plane and showed up.
Had you ever been to California before?
No.
Yeah, see, I was in the same boat too when I came to California. I didn't know anybody west of the Mississippi, you know.
No,
So,
the only place I'd really traveled to was Florida. I went to Disney World as a high school graduation present from my godmother, and that was the furthest I had ever been. So the
wow.
only plane I had ever been on until I came to California.
What'd you
So
think? What was your impression when you got to Cal Arts?
oh, it just felt like another world, to be quite honest with you. I mean, just getting off the plane and seeing palm trees was like, where am I? And you get on I don't know if how you did it, but we got on a bus from the airport that took us to the Van Nuys bus station. And then CalArts picked us up at that bus station and drove us up to school.
You took the Flyaway bus
I
out of
did.
LAX to the
Yeah, I
Van
did.
Nuys stop. Yeah,
The Van Nuys stop. And then,
I didn't have the luxury of flying across the country. I took a beat up Volkswagen Beetle from New
oh,
York to
good for
Los
you.
Angeles.
I didn't have a car. So I had no choice.
There you go. There you go. So once you got to Cal Arts, what happened at Cal Arts for you?
Well, it's that thing that I think most of us talk about. We met our tribe
Yeah.
in a way, right? We met so many like-minded artists all wanting the same thing, right? The dream was to work for Walt Disney, right? And this was the theater school, and we all knew it. We all knew that people who went to that the talented folks who went to Cal Arts all went on to get a job at Disney. So that was the dream. That was absolutely the dream for us. I was in class with a lot of people who actually did pretty well in the business.
Oh no, I think that period of time. When were you up there? You were.
I was in the class with Kirk Wise. He and I were very close friends at Cal Arts. Tim Hauser, Steve Moore,
So that was like you started in
in
81?
81,
In 81, okay.
81,
Yeah.
graduating in 85.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, so we were Dan Jupe. We were all like
Right.
very, very ambitious.
Yeah.
The class ahead of me, who were still there, they're all sophomores. So Rob Minkoff, Chris Bailey,
Yeah.
Gary Conrad,
That was my class.
Chris Wall, you,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
There was and then the class ahead of us, I
Yep.
mean
Some of them were there. Gary Trousdale.
Matt O'Callahan, Gary Trousdale,
Right. I don't think Matt was there when I got there. I think Matt had left.
yeah, he
It was
probably did.
Was Kenny Tompkins in your
Kenny
class?
Tompkins was in my class,
Yeah,
Ray Johnson, Bruce
yeah,
Smith, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Terrific.
so I mean, that whole period of time of the early '80s was really an amazing group of people.
Yeah, and we all pushed each other to grow,
Yeah.
right? And to be better than we were when we showed up. I remember when I first showed up, I was so intimidated because I thought like, how did I even get into this school? Here's Dan Jupe, who's been already talking to Eric Larson, through high school and could animate like as if he were working there already.
Yeah, he was like a young Fred Moore in
It
my
was
mind.
crazy.
Yeah,
It
how
was
good he
crazy.
was. Yeah, yeah.
And,
How
and we
good
were
he
all,
is. Yeah,
oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And we were all like in betweening scenes of Brer Rabbit thinking that we were geniuses, right? Like, ooh, look what I did. Only to realize, when you're left on your own, that you didn't know what you were doing at all. And I don't know if you had this experience, but I found CalArts to be sort of a student to student sort of growth. We had a couple of teachers that were great, but as far as animation was concerned, we were learning from each other. We really didn't have a teacher.
The thing about Cal Arts, especially back then, in my mind, was that it was tough for somebody right out of high school to go into that environment, because of the fact that it was an environment of what you got out of it, what you put into it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like there were instructors pulling you along.
Right.
You really had to put the effort in.
Right. I mean, there were a couple. I have to backtrack just a little bit because there were a couple of instructors who were just genius, and we all point to as being hugely influential, like Bill Moore.
Oh yeah, Bill Moore for the design class.
For the design class.
Elmer Plummer for light drawing.
Elmer. Yeah.
I mean, and He was a wonderful person to talk to.
He was wonderful, but he was kind of like when I got there, he was sort of phasing. He was sort of getting a bit older, phasing out. You could have great conversation with him, but I never found the instruction all that.
Yeah.
It's not that he wasn't inspiring, but there was no practical help.
Yeah.
Whereas Bill Moore just gave you this foundation for composition and color and all these pieces of the puzzle that you just knew nothing about.
And I think all of us have carried forward even just the basics from his class.
Absolutely.
For composition, small, medium, large, not just with objects, but with negative space and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Contour continuation, all those things that still sort of live in my toolbox. So it was, it was really a positive few years. I ended up going there 4 years.
And I was going to ask you, so you actually did the 4-year program and graduated, because as I've talked about on the show with other guests, a lot of people went there for 2-3 years and got plucked out during that period.
Well, I had our class was fortunate in that I say fortunate because I think ultimately it played out as it should. Disney was not hiring those years.
Yeah.
When I went into after my third year, they hired a very few after my sophomore year, maybe 2. And then in the third year, they hired no one.
And I think part of the,
no, I know where you're going to go with this, the Black Cauldron.
Well, because I think in 85, the Black Cauldron was finishing and they had a big layoff.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They did. So we all had to find our way in the world. And I think ultimately that was good for us, right? Is that we learned things that we wouldn't have necessarily picked up, or we got some grit that maybe we wouldn't have had if we had slipped into Disney.
Right.
Yeah.
I think when you got, first off, the fact that you graduated in 85, this is your 40th anniversary.
I have to confess something.
You graduated 40 years ago.
I did. Only I didn't graduate.
Like so many people, how many classes were you short?
I walked to the graduation, and I had one critical studies paper to finish, and I didn't do it. I didn't write that paper.
Until this day, you still have never done it.
I have not. And I've contacted CalArts and said, come on, you use my name all the time in your, can you just give me the diploma? And they were like, no, you have to take that class.
Did you ever take a class anywhere else after that?
I've taken classes, but I didn't take them for credit.
Okay. Yeah.
I took a class at UCLA with Chris Vogler and Bruce Block. But I never took them for credit, so
interesting.
they don't count.
Because I was in the same boat. I
Uh-huh.
actually did Cal Arts in 3 years.
Okay.
I really couldn't afford to go to the fourth year, and so I talked to Jack Hanna
Uh-huh.
about it. And I don't want to talk too much about me, but but fast forward through the 90s, I was taking classes for credit at night at UCLA's management school,
Okay.
business management school,
So
and
all that counted towards
and,
Cal
and,
Arts?
and so when I reached out to Cal Arts, a decade or so later, I said, "Hey, I took all these classes. Just have them send the transcript
That's
to
good.
us." They sent the transcript. Boom! They printed out a
Oh, that's
diploma
good.
for me. So
Oh,
anyway,
that's good.
enough
But I
about
was
me.
working, right? I
Yeah,
was working. So in
yes.
my senior year, we were doing Sport Goofy and Soccer Mania. Right?
Okay.
So I was working on that. Daryl Van Sitters was directing, and I was animating under Chris Buck. He was my directing animator. So I was already working, and then I went and did the Care Bears movie. Still working. I mean, still going to
Did
school.
did you
So
do?
my senior year, I didn't do a movie. I didn't make a film, and Jack just said, "It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You're getting practical experience. We'll just count that experience towards your grade."
So I'm looking at IMDb.
Yeah,
Have you looked at your IMDb lately?
not lately.
Because it says you're uncredited as an animator on The Black Cauldron.
I am not.
You are an animator on Rainbow Bright and The Star Stealer.
Not true.
Okay. It says you're an assistant animator uncredited on The Great Mouse Detective.
Not true.
And it says you're an animator, character designer, and a developmental animator on The Brave Little Toaster.
That's true.
Okay, so
So we got to one that finally clicks.
So the first three are. I go through this with guests all the time. I'm sure you've listened to some of the episodes
Yes.
where I have
Yes.
to have a guidepost here, and I'm looking at IMDb, and it's amazing how inaccurate IMDb
And
is.
you know what? I've tried in the past to get them to change it.
Yeah, they
They
won't
don't do
do
anything.
it.
They don't
It's
do it.
crazy.
So
All right.
somehow someone gets them to put something up that's not true, but the real person can't take it down.
But so you worked on The Brave Little Toaster.
Yeah,
What was your first project? Was that
well well with Sport Goofy when I was in school,
okay?
and then the Care Bears movie when I was in school, and then the first real project after graduating was The Brave Little Toaster.
Okay.
And they started in Los Angeles. They did pre-production in Los Angeles, and I did character design, some experimental animation, and Kirk Wise and Steve Moore and Rebecca Reese. We were all in a room together on McCadden Place. Is that the name of the? Anyway, it used to be. We were told anyway that it was an old whorehouse, and and that we were on the second
That
floor.
seems appropriate for animation.
And it was infested with rats. We put out traps for rats at night, and we'd catch them. So I did character design, some animation, a little bit of layout, and then they were going to Taiwan. So they asked me to go as an animator, and I went to Taiwan with a group of us for about, I want to say, 8 months, maybe.
What was that your first time outside the U.S.?
Yeah, out of the country. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. And stepping foot in California was nothing compared to stepping foot in Taiwan for the very first time.
And how was
walking down the street my first day there, just trying to get over jet lag, and there was a little shivering dog in the middle of the street, and I thought, oh no, what have I done? Where am I? Because it was so different than anything that I had ever experienced. But it was great fun, I have to say. Me, Steve Moore, Ann Telness, Tanya Wilson.
Oh wow, really? That's a name from
Chris
the past.
Wall.
Yeah.
Chris Wall, we were all animating.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Ramp, Jerry Reese was our director. Rebecca Reese was there. Randy Cartwright was there. So a real good group of Americans.
Wow. Great.
Learning how to animate and get this 30 feet a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So those were the numbers we were trying to hit. While everyone at Disney's doing 2.5, we were trying to hit 30.
Yeah.
Now they were like, it's a toaster with a face on it, right? So it's a box that's wobbling around. So we weren't like doing humans, although there were a couple of humans in the movie. Um, but it was near impossible. I think one week I did 32 feet, but most weeks I was under 20. I couldn't hit those numbers.
Did you feel like on that first project that you were working on with which was Sport Goofy and the Brave Little Toaster, did you feel like you learned more in the first 6 months than you did the 4 years you were at Cal Arts? And I'm saying that
Well,
not in a negative way, but it
yeah,
just
yeah.
you're kind of thrown in the deep end almost, you know?
Yeah, you couldn't have a bad week,
Yeah.
right? At Cal Arts, if you have a crappy week, you can just throw it all in the trash can and walk away.
Yeah.
When you're working professionally, you have to find a way to succeed week after week. So I think that's really what it gave me a muscle, right? Doing
Hmm.
30 feet a week gave me a muscle that I didn't have. Um, and so, and we were, I have to say, even on Toaster, we were pretty much on our own. There was
Yeah.
no one going over my scenes telling me, you know, well, you might think about this or this could be stronger. It was a matter of putting forward the footage and having Jerry. I mean, Jerry did have moments of, I'd like an extra beat here. Can you give me something else here? Or can you take this out and put this in?
Yeah.
But there wasn't like a supervising animator, like when I finally got to Disney, like
Yeah.
going over every single one of my drawings.
Mm.
Um, so it was actually kind of rough when I got to Disney because of that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the reason why I asked that question was, for me, I learned more in the first 6 months I was
Mm,
on the Black Cauldron, just about the entire Disney animation process than I did the 3 years I was at Cal Arts. And I don't say, and
yeah,
again, not saying it as a negative. I'm
right.
just saying it's there's a difference between academic and practical experience.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. And there's a different kind of pressure, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You got to
Yeah.
produce. You got to
There are
hit numbers.
expectations. Someone's giving
Yeah.
you a paycheck. You're
Yeah.
not paying them, they're paying you.
Yeah.
Right. So,
When you look back on being in Taiwan in Taipei,
yeah.
it was generally a positive experience for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Um, not only did I gain some grit, but I met some wonderful people, right?
Yeah.
We were so tightly knit when we were there.
Yeah.
Um, just because we relied on each other.
And you had to be because of the cultural differences.
Yeah, the cultural differences were so vast.
Yeah.
But we really explored. I mean, we went out and, saw the town.
Mm.
So, and some of those experiences I'll never forget. I'm not going to share them with you here,
I
but
I know this is a PG-rated show, Kevin. Got to keep it clean. So at the end of the time in Taipei,
yeah,
you finished your gig there. You
yeah,
came back to Los Angeles?
yeah. We came back, and I worked for a short time with Jerry. Jerry was trying to get another project off the ground, something called Samurai Cat, that
Mm,
was, I think, based on a comic.
yeah.
And so we were doing designs for that. Then I did a little bit of animation on Family Dog with Brad Bird. Chris Buck was again a lead animator there, supervising animator. So I went in and picked up some scenes from Chris. And then I went in-house on the Chipmunk Adventure and worked with Glenn Keane, who had
And
left the studio
and the Bagdasarians.
in the Bagdasarians, right?
Yeah. And how was that experience?
I met Glenn Keane.
Well, need we say anything more,
So
right?
that was great, and we worked on a sequence which I think is sort of the standout from that film, which is the Girls of Rock and Roll.
Hmm.
So Glenn
Okay.
was the supervising animator. I animated under him. It was the beginning of a real sort of mentor-mentee relationship in that, he started going over my work, helped me strengthen how I posed out a scene, helped me understand timing a little bit better. Um, so that was great, and he became the conduit for me to go to Disney.
I'm curious because I never really realized that he left the studio.
He did. Yep.
So, do you know why he left the studio? Did he leave after Fox and the Hound, or?
I can only guess. I'm reading this book called After Walt.
Yeah.
You heard of this book? So I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
about three-quarters of the way through, and he hasn't left yet. He's finishing the Fox and the Hound,
Yeah.
and he kind of is getting some crap from his fellow animators about the bear fight, which we all looked at as being remarkable, right? A
Yeah.
remarkable piece of animation.
Yeah.
But people like John Pomeroy and that whole group were kind of down on him, at least according to this book.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine that's why he felt like he had to go and try something different.
Hmm.
I don't know.
And
I don't
maybe
really
the
know.
Black Cauldron didn't excite him either.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
I think he left. I think the timing of this is that he was on the Black Cauldron and it wasn't working out, so they let him go, and he went over to do.
The Chipmunk
Well,
Adventure.
he went over first to do like Mickey's Christmas Carol
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
thing, right? And I think that kind of I don't know what happened there. I'm not
Yeah. Yeah.
at that point,
Interesting.
but anyway, he was there at the Chipmunk Adventure.
And that was, I mean, that was like an incredibly lucky thing for you.
Oh, it was absolutely, because I had been told, when I put my portfolio in 1985 and graduating, they just said, nope, 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 nope. And I just said, okay, then I guess I guess I don't have what they need at this moment. I didn't really know all the details of what was going on with the Black Cauldron
Mhm.
and the layoffs. We didn't really know that. They were very secretive. Um, so when Glenn said, I want you to apply. I think you've got what it takes to really to make it there. And I applied and they said, where have you been? I was like, well, you turned me down. I went out into the world. So that was kind of a little bit of a head scratcher. But I was being hired to become an animator on Oliver and Company
Okay.
with Glenn, in Glenn's unit.
Oh, great.
And they were finishing, when I got there, they were finishing Oliver and Company, but I didn't work on it.
Okay.
I went straight into, I did some storyboards on, if you remember this, the first computer generated short, I think, that Disney did, which was Lipstick and Oil Spot.
Yep. Lipstick and Oil Spot. Last year was an anniversary for it. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
So Kirk Wise and I were waiting for work. So they put us into the story department on that, and we did a couple of passes of storyboards on it.
Yeah.
And then I worked on, let's see, Jim Fanning?
Yeah.
Any chance?
Sure.
So Jim and Kirk Wise and I again wrote some treatments for Winnie the Pooh features
Okay.
that they were working on, and then I got another great opportunity. I was asked to do character design on The Little Mermaid, and this was way before they were in production, right? So this was before Oliver and Company.
Yeah.
So they were storyboarding over in the little trailer across the street, and I was in my office doing character designs, and I got to work on. I did a lot of designs for that movie.
Mm.
I basically took the storyboards, wonderful storyboards done by Kelly Asbury and Ed Goddard for Under the Sea, and did all the designs for those characters, all the Under the Sea fish and the orchestra of fish at the beginning.
Really fun section of
yeah,
the movie.
yeah. And Brenda was there. You know this. I'm married to Brenda Chapman.
Yeah. And did you meet her there?
No, I met her at Cal Arts.
Oh, so you did meet her. Were you guys dating on and off, or?
No, she was I was a senior and she came in as a freshman, although we're the same age.
Yeah.
And it took her a couple of years to get in. And we started dating almost immediately.
Wow.
And so we were, she was working on The Little Mermaid at that point in the story department. She was a trainee in the story department, and she was working on Kiss the Girl with Roger Allers. And she said, like, Kev, can you give me, I need a whole bunch of like marsh characters, like Glenn, like a Glenn of who would be in a lagoon, what kind of character. So I was feeding her all these characters, and they were using them and putting them in their storyboards. So I did that, and I did a bunch of work on Ursula and Flounder, a little bit of work on Prince Eric. Yeah. I remember one day I had to go in and sit with Jeffrey Katzenberg go to his office with Ron and John, and sit down and draw for Jeffrey. Jeffrey was over my shoulder telling me, make his smile bigger. He needs to have more like a Tom Cruise smile. And so I had to sit there and draw like while Jeffrey was talking.
Wow.
That was nerve-wracking. So that was before I ever animated. Before I went on to Oliver and Company, all of that went down. So
wow. So you
yeah.
actually were on Little Mermaid before Oliver and Company. Then you
Right.
worked on Oliver and Company. Did you go back on The Mermaid after Oliver
I
and
did
Company?
not.
You
I did
didn't.
not.
Okay.
Because what I really discovered is that I had trouble sitting behind a desk for 8 hours a day.
Got it.
I needed more kind of immediate sort of interaction. I sort of craved it. So sitting 8 hours a day animating was tough on me. Was tough on me psychologically. And then to only be doing like 2.5 feet a week and being sort of beaten up by production for not performing. I kind of thought, oh, maybe I loved all the designing I got to do on Mermaid. Maybe that's where I needed to be. And I asked to move into visual development and become a character designer.
So just so our listeners, when you say 2.5 feet of film, we're talking 40 frames essentially.
Yes.
So
it seems like you should be able to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Right?
So 40 frames, but
40 drawings in a week.
That may be that may be 20 drawings. It may be 40 drawings.
Yeah.
It may be something in between 20 and 40.
Yeah.
But if there's multiple characters in the scene, you multiply that out.
Yeah.
And with something like Under the Sea, that's a lot of animation to do.
A lot of mileage, right?
Yeah, for 2.5 feet, and that's something sometimes production wasn't fully in tune with. Not all the time.
I think they knew that it was harder to do 20 characters in a scene than it was to do one.
Yeah,
and I think they tried to sort of balance it for us. If they gave you, I remember my very first scene on Oliver and Company was in Why Should I Worry? And it should have been easy, right? It's just what's his name? Dodger, his legs strutting in the foreground, close up of his legs. In the background, there are 40 dogs doing jumping around and moving, dancing to the music. And that thing took me weeks to do. And I think they thought they were giving me something really easy, but at the end of the day, it was just really tough.
Yeah. So was that really the period where you were trying to transition into the story department?
I went into character design first because I'd had success with character design on Mermaid, and I think they knew, oh, Kevin can handle this. And I went on to Rescuers Down Under as a character designer.
Okay.
And this was very early in production. They were just starting to storyboard. We weren't even in the main building yet. I forget where Airway were we? No, where were we?
You might have
been
been
in the Airway building.
The Airway building or Hart Dannon, but not the 14.
Not the Flower Street building now.
Right, yeah.
So we were off in a little, tucked away.
Yeah.
And so I sat with a great group of people. It was like Kelly Asbury and Brenda and Gary Trousdale, sort of all doing they were all doing boards, and I was feeding them character designs. Ed Gombert was there, feeding them character designs, and
Did you design Frank the Lizard?
I did.
You did. I loved Frank the
How
Lizard.
did you know that?
Something. I did a couple of wonderful scenes with Frank the Lizard in it. And he was just such a great, energetic, funny character. I loved that character.
Yeah, I did all the designs for the animals in the prison. I did a huge number of Rescue Aid Society members. It just goes on and on. So I was on very, very early.
Yeah,
so I got to do a lot of things on that movie. Yeah, my designs. I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you dig and you look through my actual drawings, I'm very, very influenced by the Muppets. And Frank is one of those characters that feels like it lives in that world, right?
And maybe that's why I gravitated to Frank the Lizard, because I love the Muppets too.
Oh, I love them.
So
I
yeah,
love them. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So
What else
See
do you
that hand.
remember about? I'm sorry, Aljon, go ahead.
I was going to say I can see the hand now. It works.
Yep. And I had done a little bit of work right after, I think it was still in my senior year at Cal Arts. I had worked at Digital Productions for a short amount of time, like for 3 months. And I was working on something called the Muppet Institute of Technology, a program that they never made. They never moved forward with it. And I got to work with Jim Henson and Michael Frith, who's their big designer there.
Wow,
And that was a great joy. That was
so
really,
you got to meet Jim Henson.
I did.
What,
I did.
and can you just briefly tell us what kind of a
Oh,
person
he's
he was?
like everything that people say about him. He was kind, he was gentle, he was inclusive. You know what I really learned from him is that he sat in the room and he listened to everyone. He let people have their, add their piece to the puzzle. I don't think he always used everything that people were saying, but he really listened to people. And that was a lesson for me. And it was noticeable. It was really noticeable when I was in that room.
He showed everybody respect.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
So,
What else do you remember from Rescuers Down Under?
oh boy, that's a toughie. I most of the things from my days on Rescuers and all of those movies were just that I was getting to make movies with my friends.
Right.
We were all such close friends then. We weren't only just making a movie together and showing up at work. We all cared about each other, right? And we helped each other, and we hung out away from work. We were all friends away from work as well. So yeah, I think I was roommates with Kirk Wise for a long time. Brenda and I didn't live together before we got married. Her mom would not approve.
Did people know that you guys were dating?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they knew. We did though, because at Cal Arts we had very separate groups of friends. So we did keep that whole relationship, we spent time together, but we also, hung out with our classmates.
Yeah.
And we really made sure that we succeeded, and this has been something that's followed us through our entire lives, is that we were on parallel paths. We weren't going to do this together, and neither one of us was going to succeed on the back of the other, or be perceived that we were succeeding because of the other. We each made it a real point. Although we did support each other, and we were helpful, and we talked, and when someone really needed help with something, we were there for each other. But we just made sure that we were individuals in a business that could be a little catty sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. It could be, this is so and so, and his wife.
Yes.
That are
and we know many people in the business that are like that.
Yeah. And most of those wives are very successful artists on their own. And to be labeled that in a business that is really male driven or was really male dominated when we stepped into it.
Yeah. Kevin, I think this is a good place for us to break, because we can come back next week and continue talking about what you went on to after the Rescuers Down Under. Okay, we can do that. Do I get to go to the green room? You haven't talked about the green room in a while. I was going to say... Does it no longer exist? No, the green room exists. I'm going to say, Kevin, go to the green room, gorge yourself on all the free candy, and we will... Have you vacuumed lately, though? You haven't been using it. Have you vacuumed? Honestly, yeah. I mean, Don Hahn destroyed the green room. So maybe I'll go home. Well, anyway, we will see you next week, right here on the Skull Rock Podcast. Thank you, Kevin. I look forward to it.
Oh, yes. Skull Rock Podcast is on Patreon. You can help support the show with your monthly contribution and become a friend of the show. Be part of the almighty Skull Rock Podcast crew. Much like friend of the show, Josh Volker. or you become a producer, an awesome crew member. Steve Munch, also Chris Banis, thank you so much. By supporting the show, you get to make sure that A, you get a shout out on the show, and B, support the show and get this content for free every single week. Now, I tell you, one of the coolest things about being a Patreon crew member is the fact that you get to have ad-free versions of this show. So if you do dig it and you want it, you might even put in some extra, like, behind-the-scenes stuff. We're working on that. So if you enjoy the show, awesome. Be part of the show, be part of the Patreon, and keep this show going. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support and subscribing to Skull Rock Podcast.
Hello, this is Uncle Pigors, and you're listening to Skull Rock Podcast.
Your attention, please. Now loading on track number 1 for a trip around Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom.
Skull Rock Podcast.
All aboard.
Your Main Street to the world of Disney.
I tell you, man, it's always great when Kevin joins us on the show, and he's so much fun. I love it.
No, he's a fantastic person, super talented. I can't wait for our listeners to hear the rest. It's a 6-part interview, folks. And there is a lot to unpack with Kevin's career and fascinating behind-the-scenes stories.
I love it. I can't wait for more. Hey, gang, thank you so much once again for checking out this show until the very end. We do appreciate it. Feel free to like all of our socials. We would appreciate it. We're on X, we're on Facebook, Blue Sky, we're there. We're also on YouTube. Please subscribe to our show on YouTube and help that algorithm. Leave us those comments. Every little bit helps when you like, share, and subscribe everywhere where podcasts are. And, of course, our YouTube page. You can also check out our whole archive of shows there at skullrockpodcast.com. And you can follow me, Aljon, on Instagram. That's the best place to follow me, Aljon Go. And then you can also check out my other show, a weekly show called Dining at Disney Podcast, where we talk about the theme parks and, of course, our favorite Disney food. Dave?
Well, as always, you can listen to me during the month on the Tunes Behind the Tunes show on SiriusXM, Disney Hits, Channel 133. For the month of June, we're spotlighting What a Dog, He's a Tramp from Disney's 1955 animated classic, Lady and the Tramp. Again, the Tunes Behind the Tunes on SiriusXM, Disney Hits, Channel 133. If you want to get any of signed copies of any of my books, go to the oldmillpress.com. You can also go to my website, davidbossert.com. There's tons of free content. There's also free stuff you can send away for it. That's right, free. You don't get that much anymore in this world, but there is some free stuff at my website, davidbossert.com. With that, Aljon, I'm going to say go out, have a fantastic time at Walt Disney World with your family, and to everyone else, go out and have a great week. Be kind to one another, and we'll see you back here next Monday right here on the Skull Rock Podcast.